The people who build and implement AI are almost never the people who have to worry that it will ruin their lives. But what if they did? In 2017, the city of Amsterdam deployed a machine learning algorithm to detect welfare fraud. It was built by Accenture and trained on over 12,000 past investigations. It used 315 data points about welfare recipients to analyze their risk profile. It used things like age, gender, language skills, neighborhood, marital status, and even subjective assessments by caseworkers like well-groomed appearance. It then assigned a risk score, and the people who got the highest scores were flagged and investigated. That sounds efficient, right? But here's the thing. The system wasn't trained on data about who actually committed fraud. It was trained on data about who got investigated. And that data was skewed. Single mothers, people with a migration background, young people, people who didn't speak Dutch fluently, they were all more likely to be suspected of committing fraud than white Dutch middle-aged people. And that had real-world impact on real people. Take Iman, a 44-year-old Dutch-Moroccan mother of 3. She was called in for humiliating fraud investigations multiple times. She was interrogated for hours on end. At one point, she even lost her benefits for a full month and had to borrow food from the neighbors. Now, mind you, she had done nothing wrong. But to the system, her profile as a single mother with a migration background struggling to find work was high risk. Between 2017 and 2021, thousands of people were flagged, and hundreds of people lost their benefits. According to one expert, the system performed no better than random guessing. And it didn't even distinguish between serious fraud and small administrative errors like making a mistake when filling out a form. In 2021, the system was finally suspended, but the damage had already been done. Let me be clear. The algorithm did not invent the bias. It inherited the bias from the culture of suspicion that already existed and encoded it. However, the system did make it look more objective and neutral than it really was, because we all suffer from something called automation bias. What the computer says must be true. Every step along the way to deploying AI, choices are made. What data to train on, how to define fraud, where to set the threshold, and these choices may look technical, but they are political. And the people making the decisions are not single mothers from Rotterdam. So the question they asked themselves was mostly, does this system work technically? But the question they should have asked was, who does this system work against? This is where American philosopher John Rawls comes in. Rawls is best known for a thought experiment he called the veil of ignorance. His idea was simple. If you want to design a fair system, you have to design it without knowing your place in it, your position, your role. You don't know if you'll be rich or poor, powerful, powerless, black, white, native, immigrant. Rawls argued that only from behind that veil, that uncertainty, you can think honestly about how a system should work. Because if there's a real chance that you will end up at the bottom, you'll care a lot more about what that bottom actually looks like. Now, Rawls died in 2002, so he obviously wasn't talking about algorithms. He was talking about constitutions, legal systems, and economic structures. But I think his question can also be applied to AI, and maybe even especially to AI. Interestingly, Google's DeepMind has actually tested this. They ran experiments where people made decisions about AI systems from behind the veil of ignorance. So they didn't know where they'd end up in the system. And what they found is that people chose principles that protected the most vulnerable. Not because they were risk averse or even based on any political affiliations, but because they had ideas about what exactly constitutes fairness. So the veil works. Right now, though, it's not on the checklist. And I think every step in the AI design and deployment process should include one simple question. Would I accept this system if there's a realistic chance I will feel its impact? That question should be answered for every decision by every person involved, always. And let me emphasize, the veil doesn't ask you to be empathetic. It doesn't ask you to care about someone like Iman. It just asks you to be rational, to make decisions as if you might be the one living with them. Iman didn't need a philosopher. She just needed, at the very least, one person in that room to ask, what if this were me?